What's going on, everybody? Baltmatrix here, and today we're taking a look at two different Studio Series figures from Transformers Rise of the Beasts. On the left, we've got Scorponk, and on the right, we have Mowhawk. Scorponk is a deluxe class figure. Mowhawk is a core class figure. Both of these figures are rather nifty in their own way. Just given a 360-degree view, I'm not posing them really well right now because I just want you to see the base look of the figures. Mowhawk is mostly gray with the black wheels and some paint, and Scorponk is mostly shades of purple, lavender, silver, and gold. And then he's got red beady eyes, which I really like. On the whole, both of these figures look pretty good for movie-styled figures. Mowhawk is my least favorite of the two. He is very small, very spindly, does come with a little knife that is so freaking easy to lose. I've lost it twice and only to find it again. But overall, the figure looks pretty good, and his head sculpt is definitely unique. I'll have to get the shoulder pads out of the way first. I do appreciate the head sculpt, and his Mowhawk is present. But the thing I love is his mouth opens so wide, he could eat like an entire Maximal in there. I'm hungry. The Bowie knife he comes with is very small, and if you don't just leave it in his hands, it's going to get lost. Just trust me on that. Pops in either hand, either his green hand or his non-green hand, and plugs into his keister. There is a little slot there, a little peg there that it pegs into, but it doesn't peg in very tightly, and it has a tendency to fall out. Also, with my ham hands, it is really hard to get that stupid thing pegged in. There, we got it pegged in. Yeah, it falls off real easy. Mowhawk's posability is pretty good. Head is on a swivel, not on a ball joint. Ball joint in the shoulder, ball joint in the elbow. No hip articulation, but there is a ball joint in the hip. No torso articulation. Ball joint in the hip, hinge joint in the knee, and then a hinge/ball joint in the ankle. The reason I say slash is because it is limited in its movement, though if you sand the area just above the ankle joint off a little bit, it will make it a lot easier to pose and give you more range. Though I do have a major issue, kind of noodly in the hips, and he doesn't have any or adequate heels, so he falls over all the time because the wheels make him so insanely top heavy. The only thing that prevents him from falling over is leaning him forward quite a bit. That's the only way I've gotten him to, stay upright. Transformation for the little psychopath is pretty interesting. To start off with, take the wheels and fold them all the way out to the sides, and then that'll allow you to take the head and push it back until the Mowhawk pegs into place just in his back. And then we could take the right shoulder and swing that over the wheel, that is, and then point the legs straight down and point the arms straight down, and then take the right shoulder wheel and move that over and peg that loosely onto the back of his head. Then take the arms, and the arms will fold up like this, and then flip them up, and then fold them up, and they will peg into the back wheel. There's a peg on the outside of the elbow that'll peg in above the wheel, and there's a peg hole on the inside of the elbow that will, on the upper arm, that will peg into the wheel as well. So then that is the arms taken care of. Then the legs, you have to put them straight out, turn them around, and then fold them up, and there are these tabs coming off the bottom of the back of the handlebars that will tab into the thighs. And then once you've got those tabbed in, peg the legs or peg the feet together and fold them all the way down. And the bottom of the feet, there's a slot that will slot into that area just on the back of the wheel, and that gives you the seat. And there we have its little vehicle mode. And then the weapon pegs in right there. And getting this pegged in is a royal pain. Again, this thing will fall off. Just be ready for the knife to fall off. And there is the little bike mode. And if you're wondering, no, you can't put another core class figure on it. It doesn't fit. They're too big. The little bike mode it ends up with is actually not bad. It's not bad at all. I just wish the figure had more paint, and it would have been really cool if this was a deluxe class. If this was a deluxe class figure with this same transformation, I think this would be really, really cool. Unfortunately, there's no kickstand to hold it up, but it's perfectly fine and perfectly serviceable as a very strange motorcycle. All right, let's move on to Scorponk. I don't think we've ever had a Transformer that makes me think of a kaiju like we have with this guy. This thing is just monstrous. That is the only way to describe it. It's got giant, pointy shoulder pads. Its hands are absolutely massive. It's got posability for days, and it's got a wicked tail. And that head sculpt is amazing. I love that head sculpt. It's so vicious and nasty. And he uses the same head in beast mode. I absolutely adore this figure. I would love to see it painted in different styles. I would love to see a G1 coloring for it. I would love to see a Black Zarak coloring for it. I would love to see a Double Punch coloring for it. I would like to see the original 2007 movie colorings of Scorponk for this figure. I would buy them all. They would be my new Seekers, the land-based Seekers. Giant tail acts as a third leg, which is great, and it can disconnect, and then it can peg into any hand, either of the hands, and you got to do that by flipping this little tab up, and then there is a tab hole in the forearms, and then the hand goes right on it, and then that is his whip weapon. I'm calling it a whip weapon. It's not actually called that. I don't know what it's actually called. Maybe just a tail weapon. But the figure is top heavy, so you do have to be wary of that, but you can pull off some really neat poses. I'm just terrible at posing figures. The one thing I don't like about the robot mode are the beast legs. These middle legs are just one solid molded piece, and then these have a ball joint, which are nice and strong, and actually they're not going to droop because of the way they're molded. They're molded in such a way that the actual joint pushes flush up against the ball joint. So there's no real movement there for posing or for looseness to get into play. Even if those joints are loose, it's still going to hold up the Scorpion mode. Posability is pretty darn good. Head is on a ball joint and then can lift up to the transformation. Ball joint inside the shoulder, swivel connected to that ball joint, swivel at the upper arm, double bend at the elbow, ball joint for the wrist. No torso articulation due to the transformation, but ball joint in the hips, swivel at the thigh, bend at the knee, and then ball joint at the ankle. And the ankles are just a smidge loose for my taste, but nothing that can't be fixed. Scorponk's transformation is neat. Take the arms and turn them around, and then bend the hands and fold the elbows up so that they look like they're grabbing onto the shoulders. I mean, that's actually what they're doing. That's not what they look like they are doing. That is actually what they are doing. And then come to the head and push it up until it snaps into place. Come down to the hips and unpeg the hip, and then flip open the chest. And then you can unhinge the arm and shoulders, and they will fold up. Take the hips and push them up and in until they snap into place. And then the inside of the legs are going to peg into these little peg spots. That's these bits right here. But before that, fold the shin out and then turn the leg in. And we want to get that in place, pegged into place. It's a little bit hard to get lined up, but it's not impossible. I'm just failing at it right now. There we go. And do the same thing on the other side. Fold the shin out, turn the leg, bend it in, and get that pegged into place. And then close the chest bit over those, and it won't close all the way. It just kind of rests at this angle, and that's fine. That's all we want it to do. We just want to make sure that it's not flopping about. Then take the legs on the back and fold them in, and they will snap into place. And bring the legs in around like that. And, oh, this is not snapping in the way I want it to. Why aren't you doing that? And then take the shin bits, turn them around, and peg them into place. And we have completed the Scorpion mode. And, yeah, that's actually mildly terrifying. The Scorpion mode we end up with is really scary. Doesn't look anything like they do in the movies, but it is very scary. And leaning forward a bit, but that's perfectly fine. It's okay. There's no issues there. It looks absolutely horrifying. And if I saw one of these, I'd grab the nearest boot to squish it, even though they're apparently, gigantic. I love the little turbines that are in the claws. That's very much a nod to the original 2007 figure. At least I think it is. It works incredibly well for me. I really, really love this figure. And then with the little bike guy, the little bike guy in either mode can surf on top of him. Now, the Scorpion isn't the best part of this figure because I've come up with its own little monster mode. So yes, I do realize that it's just turning the figure upside down and folding out some bits to give it a monster mode, but do you remember that original Scorponk figure had its own what I called kaiju mode, and I've replicated a kaiju mode here. No, it's not as well done as that original Scorponk, but I think it works well enough. You've got the eyes and the head up here. There are eyes molded onto that tip of the tail. And then, so you've got the legs coming out, and they can act as like little weapons. And then we've got grabbing hands here, and then we've got the feet to stomp around here. If you turn it around, it kind of loses its luster. But hey, we've got ourselves a little monster mode that works. So hey, if I still had access to that original Scorponk figure, I could have 2 Scorponk kaiju figures. Before we end, just a quick warning, getting the hips out of the robot hips out of the Scorpion mode is a pain in the arse. The thing that I found works best is to get your fingers in by the hips and push them in to unpeg the hips to fold them up, and then just grab the whole thing and pull. This is the part that's really hard because that's in there pretty good. I just find that just pulling it as hard as you can straight down at an angle will get the hips to come out. That's the only advice I could give you, unfortunately. There's no easier way to do it. And if you've got this figure, you probably have realized that is really hard to pull those hips, out. Of the 2 figures, Scorponk is by far my favorite. I think Scorponk is definitely worth owning. In fact, multiple, I think, are worth owning to build out a little Scorpion family. Mowhawk is fine. He's absolutely fine, but he's not going to win any awards in my book. Scorponk, however, definitely worth having. So, folks, let me know what you think of these 2 figures down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Baltmatrix, and I will catch you all next time.